Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. Where were you when Xbox acquired Bethesda? Story time. Where was I, you might be asking? I was asleep. I was sound asleep. I remember the night before I was shot, and I was like, I'm sleeping in tomorrow, man. So when I woke up, a little bit of pep in my step because, I was feeling nice and refreshed. But that day, I recall it had the same air that when I woke up and I knew Fallout 4 was being revealed. The same air that when I woke up and the PlayStation Showcase was happening and I saw some messages saying, Matty, you might want to check it out. You may like what you see. And then we got the KOTOR remake. That day when I woke up, there was a feeling like something special was going on. And so one look at my phone and I see notifications galore, DMs, texts, emails. Get up! There's something crazy happening and you've got to see it. And I opened my phone to find out Xbox has acquired Bethesda. And so I remember grabbing my equipment, like leaving my room with everything in my hands, still in my pajamas. I didn't even think to change at first. My parents were like, whoa, what's going on? I'm like, yo, Xbox just bought Bethesda. I got to go. And even my parents were like, are you kidding me? It was just this wild moment of, for me, realizing like the Bethesda that I once loved had a chance at redemption here. And that was extremely exciting. So now in this video, I want you all to reflect, of course, in the comments down below. But let's analyze it 1 year later. How are we feeling about this deal? This was the announce of intent to acquire. Technically, every fucking time, man. Does anyone know how to turn this shit off? It always speaks during videos. I know technically, as I was saying, we have the 1 year anniversary in March when they actually acquired them. But the announcement, the reveal, the hype, the excitement, that was in September when they were like, we're going to get them. And they had to go through this government process for over half a year. And finally, it was a deal sealed away. So I know there's some technicalities there that some of you nerds are going to be like, Matty, actually, I don't want to hear it. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about Xbox and Bethesda. All right, so they acquire them for $7.5 billion. I think the big question with that right now is, a year later, does it look like an overpay? I think obviously it's way too early to call that because we have to get our hands on the products. We have to see how much money's generated. But immediately upon Xbox acquiring Bethesda, that following quarter in the holiday, Microsoft as a whole made like 2 times the amount of money they had spent on Bethesda. So while it doesn't necessarily work this way where you take money in and out of this bank account and it's for everybody, I gotta say that I'm pretty sure that the money that was spent on Bethesda was almost immediately made back from all various other Microsoft products. And so they really weren't worried about return on investment. It was about building up the Xbox brand into something worth caring about. I don't really give too much thought specifically to Bethesda and Xbox with overpay, really because of Microsoft's lump sum of cash that they seem to always have available for anything they ever want. It's just an endless pit of money. Whereas something like what Gearbox was sold for at $1 billion, I was like, that's a lot. Or underselling like Insomniac for $200+ million. And look how much content they are bringing. That is amazing to PlayStation fans. I mean, oh my God, if they waited just a handful more months, they could have easily multiplied that price by like 10. Easily, without a question. And Sony would have been stupid to not pay them for all this stuff that they're doing now. But hey, props to Sony. They really spent the time with them and worked that price down year over year over year over year. 200 million. Wild to think about. So when I look at Xbox and Bethesda, it's the most expensive acquisition we have seen yet. And I imagine we'll eventually see someone even more expensive, given that we are now in a buyer's market. But I think when you look at the value you get for Game Pass, you look at all of the studios you get, the IP and the crossover, the heritage that's there, and the support you can offer, I feel like it sort of pays for itself immediately before we even see the games that are coming. Let's talk about that. We've got Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, ZeniMax Online Studios, Arcane Studios, Machine Games, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog, and Roundhouse Studios. Now, the last two are like support studios, and we're really not sure what's going on there. Like, one of them formerly worked on Prey 2, which then got canceled. So I'm curious what they're doing over there, but I just can't really speculate because it was such a messy transition of studio acquisitions there where they had like worked on some Skyrim clone and then had been transitioned off, and it's a messy legal thing. But beyond all of that, You have studios that we are very familiar with, like Arcane with Dishonored, recently Deathloop. You have id, who's best known for Doom, and a lot of people were like, yo, could they work on a Halo game now? I think they're a little too fast-paced for Halo, but imagine handing id like a Blade game, a Marvel Blade game or something. I mean, that's the thing, is they got talent with this, and if Xbox is smart, which I trust they are, they can really apply some fun IP to these companies if they're willing to bite at them. Of course, I think the biggest beneficiary of them all is Bethesda Game Studios. Now, I'm a little biased in that, right? Of course, I completely acknowledge that. But the reason I say that is because this company should have never released a live service game. Now, I have it on good authority through some sources that they were proud of Fallout 76, like even when it released, because of the achievement it was to take Creation Engine as a single-player RPG engine and have it support an MMO. And I understand on a technical level how they could be kind of proud of that, but obviously there's different aspects of the technical level where the game just wasn't working. But I have that on pretty good authority, that this was something that was an internal feeling shared. With that said, though, in my mind, they should have never had to have made a service game. But it seems more and more apparent that one of the leading decisions behind this was really that they wanted to make sure that their value was as high as humanly possible so that when they sold, they made the most money. And the trade-off there was permanent damage dealt to the Bethesda brand. I think Fallout 4 is spotty for some people. I really like it. I get it's got its shortcomings, but I still enjoy it a lot as a game. A lot of people can't stand it, but I don't think it did remotely the damage that 76 did. And even 76 in currently its best state, lots of great patches, lots of new updates, lots of exciting things coming to the game, I still think that there has been damage dealt that's irreparable until they get another hit out there. And now the trust has disappeared. So what I'm really excited about is you have a company that no longer needs to reach for the cash and just do what they did best. Make single-player RPGs. And now they're working with a new IP, and they're saying apparently they're going more hardcore with it. And I think now that you've got Game Pass there, you've got Xbox backing you monetarily, like, I feel it loosens up the pressure. You don't gotta crush it financially. Just go make a really good game. And I can't wait to see what they do. And of course, that last bit of the mindset applies to everybody. Arcane is another one that I think especially benefits from a player base. They need exposure. I think their games would sell more, but they need exposure. When Prey got added to Game Pass, you would have thought the game just came out with FPS boost and everything, because people were going nuts over this game and going, how did I not play this? How did I miss this? And it's really unfortunate because Arcane, even if I have my thoughts on Deathloop, which it seems like a lot of people disagree with, I think Arcane is fantastic. They are a phenomenal, extremely talented studio that makes some of the best hub locations to explore ever in video games. And the idea that they can get the funding to just do what they want, even if I have my reservations about Redfall, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I cannot wait to see what they do with a proper budget behind them. However, there's the trade-off here. Some of these studios, I think, function best in their limitations because it leads to a lot of innovation within the work they're doing. And while it's always exciting to know if some company got a limitless budget, what would they do with it? I think some function better when they have to manage their money a little bit more tightly because they have to be more thoughtful about creative decisions. So let's bring that into the exclusivity debate with games like Starfield, Redfall, and Indiana Jones. This was a big thing. Remember back when this all started, are they going to be exclusive? And from day one, your boy was like, lock them down. They're done. Like, they're not going to PlayStation. Anything new is not coming to PlayStation. Anything that's a remaster, re-release, older series, yeah, you have a chance. But this was a big debate for months and months, to the point where if you were a daily viewer of mine, you might have gotten sick of some of my content because every single other week it was like Phil Spencer or Matt Booty or other members of Xbox talking about like, yeah, we're trying to loosely dance around the idea of exclusivity and trying to be direct without really saying it because legally they could not. And so there was just so much room for debate, unfortunately, even though it was obvious they were going to lock it down. And now with Redfall and Starfield, that was kind of the big slam dunk at this past year's E3, where they combined for a showcase and they said, yes, these are Xbox exclusive. Now, on a side note, before we go back to the games, That's the other thing I wanted to talk about, was their public stance together. I'm always wondering if that's going to be a permanent thing or if that was a message to the audience. Because not only did they team up for a show calling it the Xbox and Bethesda Showcase, but what happens when they, say, absorb another big company? Let's say, hypothetically, right? They get Sega. Does it become the Xbox, Bethesda, and Sega Showcase? Or does it become just the Xbox Showcase? Or do Bethesda and Sega do their own thing, and then Xbox has their own showcase? I always wonder that with the obvious growth that'll come. But despite all of that, I loved one thing about that showcase that had nothing to do with the games. Bethesda started first. I think there was a lot of respect in that. You thought it was going to be Phil Spencer, Aaron Greenberg, Matt Booty, someone from Xbox. Todd Howard starts off the show. It's Bethesda first introducing it and thanking fans. And I love that. I think it's just a really great gesture. But let's go back to the games, right? So we had Starfield, Redfall, Lockdown for exclusivity. We have to wait and see how those play out. We've also got Indiana Jones. This is a little bit of a sore spot for people, and they don't like when I talk about it. But I think that Xbox, they need to up their, let's just say, licensed game a little bit. Whether it be Marvel, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean, or going over to DC and being like, yo, PlayStation's got Marvel. Come on, let's team up. Why don't we? Which I think is more likely than anything, just mimicking that kind of pop culture phenomenon of Marvel versus DC and just watching these two titans battle it out would be sick. But anyway, we got Indiana Jones, which was announced months after the acquisition. I believe it was in January or February of this year, and it's coming from Machine Games. This was another one where a lot of people were like, oh, is this going to be exclusive as well? I don't know. I think just given the precedent set, this will 100% be exclusive. But they're really already showing the fruits of investing in Bethesda by announcing those 3 new IP right away. Because if any of those land, they can be compelling reasons to at least get into Game Pass. And then the other element that I wanted to talk about that I always like to reflect on is Big Ball and Bethesda. I remember during the PlayStation showcase for the PS5 last year when they were showing off Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, it was this moment of like, wow, Bethesda's actually really going in on PlayStation, which was weird because Bethesda had thrown PlayStation under the bus multiple times, especially when it came to Fallout modding. Bethesda games historically suck on PlayStation, and I wasn't upset about it, but it was disappointing because the optics were like they were taking more of a greed route when you looked at, of course, PlayStation, and then you looked at what was happening with 76 at the time, and the monetization in Youngblood. And I remember looking at it going, what is happening here? Now we know they were just getting all the money before they would sell off to Xbox. And now in hindsight, I'm like, that was pretty smart. You got your money from PlayStation and Xbox. I don't think we'll ever see that again. That is some next level negotiating where they kept PlayStation in the dark and worked on Xbox the whole time. And then reports started to come out that Starfield was going to be a PlayStation exclusive as well. And I think that's where Xbox really ramped up that dollar count. And I think that's where the high pay count went to. But overall, I thought this would just be a fun video. Just run down a lot of the major talking points that have sort of engulfed Xbox and Bethesda and revisit them, talk about them entirely 1 year later, and pass it back to you. What do you think about what's going on with Xbox and Bethesda 1 year later? Let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, really looking forward to seeing what you think about the deal and other future acquisitions. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.